This is the I'm Possible Project show, where we interview real people who have achieved incredible feats in the face of overwhelming odds, showing that impossible is just a state of mind and that anything is possible. I'm your host, Joshua Rivedal. Today, in episode 17, The Scars That Leave a Roadmap, I talk to Rachel Brummert. Let's jump right in.
Rachel Brummert, and she worked at a nonprofit for a bunch of years, and she's now the founder and CEO of the RSB Patient Safety Coalition. She had a bad experience with some antibiotics that, partially left her, with some disability, but she is hustling and grinding, and in 2017, she was appointed as consumer representative for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, where she represents and protects the interests of patients from a patient safety perspective. And she was also appointed to the board of directors of the USA Patient Network, and she serves as a peer reviewer for the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute. And she's originally from New Jersey, like me, so you all can't hold it against two people, but she's originally from New Jersey, and now she lives in Charlotte, North Carolina with her husband, Kurt, who I've also gotten to meet, and two dogs. So Rachel Brummert, thank you so much for jumping on the show and hanging out with us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Josh.
Yeah, for sure. I got a chance to know you a little bit. You were in our first Time Possible book, Re-Engaging with Life, Creating a New You, and you have a great story. And then we got a chance to meet in the South, and we got on the news together in a good way. We run on cops, everybody.
Did. Yeah.
And that was what? That was back in 2015, so that was a little while ago.
It was a while ago. I haven't seen you since then. You need to get down to North Carolina.
No, I'm working on it. Been a lot of Texas and Ohio and California for whatever reason, but I'm working on Carolina. But you're way more than that little bio I just read off and all that. I'd love for the listeners to know a little bit more about you, what's happened to you, who you are, where you've been, where you're going, the Rachel Brummert experience.
Well, it's a long story, but, in a nutshell, I grew up in New Jersey just like you did. I moved to North Carolina 2 years ago, and I've been married for 15 years, and we had what we thought was a normal, uneventful life until about 2006. And that was when I was thought to have a sinus infection that it turned out I never had. And I was prescribed an antibiotic called Levaquin. And that medication is associated with severe adverse reactions, only nobody told me. There was very little known about it at the time. So I'm on my 11th tendon rupture in 11 years, and I have chronic pain, neuropathy, central nervous system damage, autonomic nervous system damage, brain damage, memory loss, cognitive issues. And, these disabilities have created a lot of challenges in my life. So I've kind of had to learn a new normal after all of this. And, here we are 11 years later.
Unbelievable. And the fact that you're still standing and doing your thing and even taking time out of your life, which has been turned upside down, to help other people, it's commendable. I can't believe that you've been through all that. What?
I appreciate it.
I mean, what? Yeah. And how did this even happen? How did nobody know about this antibiotic and its adverse effects? I mean, somebody had to do some testing and trials and all that stuff. How did it slip through the cracks?
It's difficult to say because, when they do these trials, I believe that they know this information and it just didn't get out to the public yet. So back in 2006, when this happened to me, it was 2 years later when the tendon rupture warnings came out. And I had already ruptured, 3 or 4 tendons by this point. So it's something, I didn't connect it right away. It was actually my surgeon that did. But, the information came about years later. And that's part of the problem is that there's not a lot of post-market surveillance on these drugs. So these adverse, they're pushed through the system very quickly. And they're not really tested all that well. And patients are not followed up with. So we find out these adverse reactions years later, and by then a lot of people get hurt. So it's clearly a broken system.
I find that so not hard to believe because I believe you and I know what you're talking about, but I find it so hard to believe that this is acceptable because in any other field of business, I mean, unfortunately in the U.S., healthcare and health is a business rather than a necessity or possibly a right, but the fact that there's a lack of oversight, because if Google or if Amazon or if mom and pop down the street aren't doing the testing and doing the information on the front end and doing the market research, but then on the back end, following up with those customers and those people to make sure that they've had a good experience, that the product hasn't malfunctioned. I know not everybody does that, but it tends to be a good business practice. And the fact that pharmacology isn't doing that as well blows my mind.
And the adverse reporting system that they have at the FDA, only about 1% of adverse reactions actually get reported. So, there's a lot of people who don't know that they can report it to the FDA, and the FDA doesn't use all of the studies and all of the patient experiences in making decisions. So, it's a very broken system, and it's something that I sort of dedicated myself to after all this happened, because I don't want this to happen to anybody else.
Right. No way. And what do you think the first step, because there's always 1,000 steps to get where you want to go, and helping people or creating a job or a business or whatever it is, goal setting. What do you think quite possibly the first step is in fixing this issue?
Well, I think transparency is key. So, our community, we all kind of came together and we sort of raised the alarm about all of this, and we got the FDA to listen. And they've added warnings over the years, but it's because people got injured that these warnings are even happening. So, I think there needs to be transparency in the research from the pharmaceutical companies. I think there needs to be more honesty about what the adverse reactions are. You think of an antibiotic that is supposed to be prescribed for severe infections. Like take anthrax, for example. It's strong enough to kill that, but they're giving it to people who don't need it. And nobody really knew about it. The warning about that only came about maybe last year. So I think, what we need to work on is definite transparency and, work with the FDA about what their warning labels are going to say.
I think you're right. I mean, I don't know what the first steps are, but the transparency piece sounds like a good step, whether it's the first or the fifth. How would you get pharma, your Eli Lillys and your Mercks, how would you get them to comply with this? I mean, I think it would be in their best interest to do exactly what you're saying for a whole host of reasons, but how would you get them to comply with something like this? Is it through legislation, lobbying?
Right.
What does that mean?
I think definitely legislation, and I've been to Washington D.C. and I have talked to some senators about this, and I know a lot of people are too. What happens when the FDA comes out with a warning? They don't require the drug companies to follow up on that, so there's no consequences if they do or they don't. And I think that needs to be fixed also. I think maybe the FDA should make a directive to these companies and say, if you don't comply, there's going to be a fine or there's going to be whatever. But there needs to be some sort of consequences there, because everybody's sort of passing the buck and nobody's really communicating with each other about what's in the best interest of patients.
Is that your dog? We talked about your dog.
I warned you. I told you.
Your dog make it on the show?
Yes, he did. He wants to be famous. Just being cute isn't good enough. So.
I don't just
he's
want
a
to be
mini.
cute. I want to be
famous. He's a mini dachshund and he's very loud.
I've seen pictures of him, but I didn't realize he's probably he's definitely from New Jersey as well, so that would explain why he's so loud.
That is true. Maybe that's it. Yeah, he's been quiet all day, and of course he has to get on the show to be famous. This is the first time he's been noisy all day, and of course it's right now. So, yeah, I told you that.
I want to be on the show.
Yeah, he's kind of a fame hog. He likes the camera and he likes the attention, and yeah.
We got to get him a job on a TV show or something. The next Eddie. Although I don't know if he would ever shut the hell up, but
I think he could be a YouTube star with the right producer.
Yes, that's hilarious.
I could send you a headshot to put in the video. Yeah.
Could you please?
We'll
have him on the next show. You're gonna have to interpret though, and we'll accept whatever you say as what.
Yeah. Well, usually the interpretation is I'm unhappy that you're getting attention and I'm not.
Sounds about right. He's from New Jersey, and he might as well be living in LA with me.
Exactly. Yeah.
So with all that you've been through with these antibiotics and lobbying and being a consultant and making sure that folks aren't going through what you've been through, What do you think your biggest challenge has been in this 11-year process?
So many things, my life is different because there's certain things that I can and can't do. So you sort of mourn the loss of the things that you were able to do before, and you sort of get into this depression, like, I want to be the person I was, and that may or may not happen. There's some people that recover and some people don't. So I think accepting that there's a new normal and sort of making it a good life anyway. Like, this doesn't define my life. This thing that happened, it continues 11 years later, but it doesn't define the rest of my 47 years on this earth.
You're not 47. You don't look 47.
I am. Oh, you are my new best friend. Thank you.
I think that's well put. You aren't what your condition is, and you aren't what's happened to you, but it's a part of you, and you get to choose how to respond and what to do next.
Because I was angry for years, and I'm not really angry anymore. I sort of, you kind of have to be able to take those kind of the anger and the frustration and the endless amount of doctors and money that you're throwing into this, and you kind of have to turn it into something else that's going to help somebody else. And in turn, it kind of helps me being able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Making meaning of what you've been through and then volunteering and helping others. I think that's one of the best ways to keep your head on straight when going through stuff like my depression or losing a parent to suicide and all the stuff that you've been through, and the fact that you're making meaning out of it and volunteering and helping other people. It sure doesn't hurt, but I think it definitely helps the world around, and it helps you in turn, which is important. We want you to stay here too. We want you to stick around.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty humbling. I've had people contact me and say, you know what, because you told your story, because everybody in your community told your story, I decided that this wasn't the right medicine for me, and I can't even tell you how good that makes me feel. The reporter that we did the interview with for the book, she ended up with I think it was bronchitis or a sinus infection. I can't remember which one, but she emailed me and said, my doctor tried to give me Levaquin, and I know from you to say no. And that's
brilliant.
That was one person, and I'm really, even if it's just one person, I'm very happy with that.
And that's got to be incredibly gratifying to know that you're saving lives and you're improving the quality of life.
Yeah, and I think it helps people feel less alone, too, because, when this happens to you, you kind of feel like you're the only one that this happened to, that you're just having the worst luck. And then, when someone contacts me, I'd be like, well, I went through the same thing. I've had the tendon ruptures and everything. And people just seem to feel a little bit better knowing that there's somebody there to go through the journey with them. And it's not so frightening if you're not doing it by yourself.
Mm-hmm. We need a support system. I think what you're saying, we need a support system. And you going through what you've been through, I'm thinking Kurt has been great, your husband Kurt. And
he has, he's been a saint through all of this. And I honestly wouldn't have been able to get through it without him. And I have wonderful people in my life, my husband, my friends, my family, people in our community. So I'm very fortunate in that respect.
Yeah, because when you do feel alone, you then isolate. And that's one of the worst things that a person can do, is isolate and kind of pull away, because there's a forgetfulness, and I've been there too, where I'm important. What I've got to say matters. And even though I'm going through it right now, and my knees are deep in all the BS that I've been having to traipse through because of this antibiotic or what have you. But what I think we forget sometimes is that even if it's not in that moment, but down the road, you have a voice, you have something to say, and you have something to teach to the world. And I'm so glad that you had people around you to pick you up when you were down, but that at some point you also realized that I do have a voice. I do have something to say. I am not this diagnosis. I'm not these tendon ruptures. I'm more than that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I learned from all of this. This is my takeaway, is that, I have a voice, we all have a voice, and it's okay to challenge a system that doesn't make sense. The approval process and the way they're prescribed, it doesn't make sense to me. And I realized that I have a voice and I can say something, and that as a patient voice and an advocate, I have an equal seat at the table at working toward a better system. It might not happen right away, but I think just being able to speak up and being able to say, listen, as patients, this is what we need. I think it's important that we all have a seat at the table and just not, you don't have to accept that this is the way things are.
I think everybody's got a seat at the table, and sometimes we let people push us into the kids' table, or there's a variety of reasons why we don't realize we have that. Everybody's got a seat at the table, and
Absolutely.
we all need to be good at taking turns being at the head of the table. And speaking in that metaphor, now this 11-year journey, I might know the answer to this, but I just kind of want to hear it from you. Because most people would say, even though you are doing quite wonderfully in terms of your advocacy, the physical stuff might not be as great as you'd want it to be. But how has this whole experience changed your life for the better, if at all?
You don't realize how strong you are until you're sort of put to the test. And that's sort of how I feel about all of this. I don't accept things the way they are. I don't, I question protocols that just don't work and put patients at risk. I question that, and I speak up, and I wouldn't have done that otherwise, I don't think. It's a shame that it happened after something happened to me, but I feel more confident and more like I have an ability to sort of affect change. I'm not just saying this thing that happened to me. This is happening to millions of people all over the world. And I sort of feel like I have a responsibility to say something. So I think, it sort of made me more vocal and more willing to fight a system that doesn't make sense or that harms patients. And I don't know that I would have had that before.
Yeah, you've found your voice. You've turned lemons into lemonade. And it's kind of like if you can get through this, you can get through anything.
It sort of showed me that you don't have to sink into this despair. Like, this horrible thing happened, but my life isn't over.
Oh, it's far from it. You have many
years. I got way more to do.
Taking ass and taking in.
Right. I'm from Jersey. What can I say?
Yes. My Jersey only comes out when I'm excited or maybe angry or like the extreme emotions, and then the accent comes out, and I have to take my weave off and take my mind taking my earrings out, and then I get Jersey ghetto on you. And that's what you did with life, girl. You pulled your weave off and you undid your earrings, and you were like, I'm not taking this. I'm not going to take this sitting down.
You can't take the Jersey out of anybody or someone who's passionate about what they're doing. I mean, you know how that is with your advocacy. There's no stopping us. There's nobody better to advocate for other people who have been through something.
Agreed. And there's kind of touching on that too, and it kind of goes back to this idea of a support system too, because we are unstoppable and we will continue to be that way. I was reading something, and I'm blanking on it at the moment, but it was about Arnold Schwarzenegger. And, like him, don't like him, there are good aspects of him, just like anybody else. But one thing I appreciated that he said was, he's like, I'm not a self-made man. I have thousands and thousands of people who, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but I have all these people who've said yes to me, who've picked me up, and that's where we are too. So we're unstoppable, but it's hardly because of our own efforts. I mean, we definitely have to be the engineer and throwing coal in the fire and all that as far as locomotive, but there's other people helping us out too. And I want the listeners to be reminded of that, because I think it's so important.
You can go farther with a support system because, you're going to get tired along the way.
Yeah, and we get tired. Even though we're unstoppable, I had another person last week who was talking to me about compassion fatigue. I mean, you're trying to help so many people, and then at some point you're like, I don't care anymore because I'm exhausted, and that kind of deal.
Yeah, I'm actually glad that you brought it up because, being an advocate really does take an emotional toll, because you're listening to people who are way worse than you, or they've lost somebody. I had something traumatic happened when I was talking to someone. I don't know if I should say this on a radio show, but he shot himself while I was talking to him because he felt such despair. And that takes a toll on you, and you feel like you're not doing anybody any good. And then you kind of dust yourself off, and then you realize, well, you have so many other people to help through this. But it does take its toll when you are advocating for other people and trying to be a voice for them when they don't feel that they can be. So I'm actually glad that you brought that up.
For sure. And one thing I want to tap into, anyone listening who is struggling, who may be going through something like the person who was on the phone with Rachel at one point who took their life. There's always hope. There's always support. There's always somebody who's ready, willing, and able to listen, to be there, to share, to hold you, to hug you, to laugh with you, cry with you. And you might not even know that person yet. My family is my family, but my family is also the sum total of a lot of the friends that I've made over my life, and it really hasn't been a family, and except for the past maybe 5-6 years after I was in my own crisis. So I just want to remind folks that hold on. There's hope. There's healing, and it's hard. It's hard to go through that, to be fatigued with what life is throwing your way, but it can and it will get better, and keep the faith.
No, I know you've definitely helped me before. I know that I've been in a bad place every once in a while, and I reached out to you, and you were wonderful, and it's sort of been and then you pay that forward. You got to help other people, and so I appreciate you as a friend and as someone who is always there for me.
Yeah, well, that's what friends are for, and I'm grateful for the friendship. And we don't talk 10 times a month, but that doesn't define a friendship, No,
it's quite.
We connect when we connect. And just one more thing to that end. If you're in the U.S. and you're listening and you are in crisis, and there are more resources out there, but you can definitely call 800-273-8255. It's a crisis hotline. And then if you don't feel comfortable talking to somebody and you want to text, you can text GO to 741-741, and that's a crisis text line. And of course, if you reach out to us here at the Impossible Project Show, I personally, and I know the team of people that I have, will definitely do our very, very best to be there and to listen and to refer and to just be. And you're so right, Rachel, about paying it forward. When I first reached out, and I was in crisis about 6.5 years ago or so, I was kind of reticent to reach out because I was like, well, I have nothing to offer these people who I'm reaching out to. And then I thankfully I took the risk and reached out anyway. And then as I realized after some time passed that it's not about reciprocity. It's not about, well, they did this for me, so now I need to go bake them a cake or mow their lawn. It's more like pay it forward, help the next person in crisis. So I'm really glad that you said that as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
So Rachel, I want to have some fun here because I love talking about the serious stuff. And we've already had some fun, but this is called the quick fire round. And this is just some fun, silly questions. Don't even think about it. Just whatever comes to mind. So here we go. Let's just have fun, and we're going to get started. So, Rachel, what is your favorite word?
I hate you.
Changing your tune quickly, eh?
I know. It's kumquat. It was from when I was a little girl. My grandfather used to tease me with that.
What's the word, kumquat?
Kumquat, the fruit, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That is such a weird word.
I know. Yeah, I don't know why that popped in my head. It was something my grandfather used to make me laugh with.
Such a silly kind of a word. There's some dirty connotation somewhere in there. And then, I don't know what quadding is, but, quadding should be something. We need to, maybe figure this out offline. But kumquat is it's a great word, actually. It's fun. What is your least favorite word?
Hate.
That's a popular one. Hate is a popular one, and moist is a popular one for least favorite word.
Yeah, I wasn't going to go there with that one.
You already said kumquat. You'd just be beating a dead horse. Who or what is your spirit animal?
It's actually a bug. It's a dragonfly.
Dragonfly. Why? Tell me. I've never asked anyone why, but why is that?
A dragonfly symbolizes strength, and I also believe that people who have passed away, I think they send steins through dragonflies. So whenever I see one, I always think of somebody that was special to me.
I dig it. That's really cool. It's a very positive outlook. The dragonfly, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I love dragonflies. I have a thing for dragonflies.
Sweet. What are you terrible at, by the way?
I can't whistle.
You can't whistle? Really?
No, and I can't do that Spock hand thing either. People make fun of me all the time about that.
Oh, you can't do what? When you put your fingers in your mouth and do that loud whistle? Is that what you mean?
No, I can't whistle, but the Spock hand signal thing.
Oh, the Spock thing. I misheard you. Yeah, you can't do that either.
Yeah, I can't do that either, and people make fun of me for that. You
obviously hang out with a group of nerdy people.
I do. I actually like nerdy people. It's my people. Yeah. I'm
not so much closeted as a nerd. I'm pretty okay with it too.
True.
So
yeah.
That's true. Thanks for acknowledging that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I really,
you are a nerd.
Just don't tell anybody. Except for everybody that's listening, don't tell anyone.
Oh yeah, we'll keep it a secret. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say to you as you enter or as you get kicked out?
Well, when I enter, I would hope someone told me that I did good in the world. If I get kicked out, it's probably going to be for texting too much, or I don't know.
I'm pretty sure that no one's going to get kicked out for texting too much. I think you're safe. I think you're going to make it in.
I'm not normal. You never know. Plus, I'm going to be really old by then. Maybe the technology will kick in by then.
Fair enough. Well, I think we'll all be living to 120 in a few years. So
I'm weird. I accept that I'm weird. So yeah. Same
here. That's funny. So that's the end of our quick fire round. Now I'm curious, kind of closing down, but what does the future hold for you? What does maybe the next year or two look like for you? I know you opened a new consulting business, and there's a few things that you got going on. What's crack-a-lacking for you in the next couple of years?
I kind of feel like I'm at a place in my life where I love my work and I can't imagine doing anything else. So 2 to 3 years from now, I sort of see myself doing the same thing, but being better at it, because I'm kind of feeling my way around right now.
Sure.
But I've learned a lot, about medications and devices in the system, and so whatever I end up doing, I know that I'm going to take that and I'm going to help create a better healthcare system.
Brilliant. I like the near future for you, and I think we're all going to benefit from that.
I hope so.
So if folks want to get in touch with you, if they want to figure out what you're doing, keep in touch, what's the best way they can do that?
That would be through my website, which is www.rachelbrummert.com. There's a contact tab on there, and it has all my social media and a contact form, and there's a newsletter that you can sign up for to see what I'm up to.
Super duper. I love it. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for being on the show.
You've been listening to the I'm Possible Project show with Joshua Rivedal and guest Rachel Brummert. I love sharing stories and how to turn impossible into I'm possible. If you want more inspirational stories, our second and third books are in pre-order right now. Changing Minds, Breaking Stigma, Achieving the Impossible, as well as Lemonade Stand. Both contain powerful stories of overcoming tremendous odds. When life gives you lemons, squeeze, add sugar, and pick up a copy of The I'm Possible Project. www.IamPossibleProject.com/pre-order. Thank you so much for tuning in. You're more than a community. You're part of the I'm Possible family. Until next time, sending you lots of love.